You really believe she can keep holding that financial leverage over us without consequences? Her help with the down payment came with invisible strings, and it's time the family saw them for what they are. The group chat notification was an accident, but it gave us the perfect opening. Everyone will know by the end of this reunion. Plant that note in the old book like we discussed. When it accidentally gets read during the gathering, her image will crack. Minitir sir Torare. By the time we're done, she'll be the one begging for forgiveness and will have the control we deserve. Hi, my name is Claire Thompson. I am 32 years old. I overheard those words in the kitchen of our quiet countryside house in Kentucky 2 mornings before the Memorial Day reunion began. My husband Derek was speaking in a low, deliberate voice to my younger sister Brooke. They thought I was still upstairs unpacking. I stood frozen on the stairs, one hand gripping the banister, the other pressed flat against my chest like I could physically hold my heart in place. The house smelled of coffee and the lemon cleaner I had used the night before, ordinary and safe. Their voices made it feel like the walls themselves had turned against me. The plan was already in motion. They intended to weaponize the one time I had stepped in with money years ago, twist it into something ugly, and let it play out in front of the entire family over the long weekend. A mistakenly forwarded group chat message had apparently started the ball rolling. Now they wanted to finish it with a hidden note tucked inside an old book that had belonged to our grandmother. The goal was public shaming that would strip away whatever quiet leverage I still held and force me back into the role they preferred, the helpful one who stayed quiet and paid when needed. I did not confront them that morning. I went back upstairs, finished unpacking, and kept my face neutral when I came down for breakfast. Thoughtful. Firm. That was how I had always moved through this family. I asked Derek if he wanted more coffee. I asked Brooke about her drive from Louisville. Inside, something cold and sharp had settled. I had spent years being the steady one, the one who wrote the check when Brooke's car needed repairs, the one who co-signed the loan that let Derek start his small contracting business. Now they were going to turn every act of help into proof that I was controlling and manipulative. The first crack came that afternoon when my phone lit up with a group chat notification I was never meant to see. It was from the big family thread my Aunt Patricia had started weeks earlier to coordinate food and sleeping arrangements. Someone had forwarded a private thread between Derek and Brooke. The messages were time-stamped from the week before. I read them standing at the kitchen counter while everyone else was out on the porch. Derek. She still thinks that loan gives her a say in how we run things. Time to remind her it doesn't. Brooke. The note in Grandma's old book will be perfect. I'll make sure someone finds it during the toast on Sunday. Derek. Once the group chat sees how she's been holding it over us, she won't have a leg to stand on. We get the leverage back. She gets to watch her perfect reputation burn. My hands went cold. I set the phone down carefully as if it might explode. The house was quiet except for the distant sound of my cousin Tyler laughing outside. I walked to the window and watched them all through the screen, aunts, uncles, cousins, my parents sitting in lawn chairs like this was any other holiday. No one knew yet that 2 people in this family were actively planning to humiliate me in front of everyone. I did not cry. I did not scream. I opened the Notes app on my phone and started typing exactly what I had read word for word with the timestamps. Then I screenshotted the entire forwarded thread and saved it to a locked folder. Thoughtful, firm, I was already building the record. The next morning, I drove into town for a few hours of work at the small community center where I managed grant applications and after-school programs. It was supposed to be a quiet day. I had barely sat down at my desk when the front door opened and my younger sister walked in. She had never visited me at work before, not once in the 3 years I had been there. She smiled like we were just 2 sisters running into each other. Hey, Claire, got a minute? I kept my voice even. I'm in the middle of a report for the county. What's going on? She perched on the edge of my desk like she belonged there. Just wanted to check in before the big weekend. You seem tense. Everything okay with you and Derek? The question was a test. I could feel it. She was fishing to see if I had seen anything if I was already rattled. I'm fine, I said. Busy. The reunion should be nice, lots of family together. Brooke tilted her head. You know, sometimes when people do too much for others, they start expecting things in return. It can get messy. Derek and I were talking about that the other day. There it was. The first jab delivered with a soft smile in the middle of my workplace. She wanted me to react, to defend myself, to show my hand. I did not give her the satisfaction. I appreciate the concern, I said, standing up and gathering a stack of files. But I have a meeting in 10 minutes. We can talk more at the house. She left without pushing further, but the message was clear. They were watching me. They wanted me off balance before the real performance began. That night, back at the countryside house, the family started arriving in earnest. Aunt Patricia brought her famous potato salad. My parents took the guest room. Cousins filled the living room with sleeping bags and laughter. I moved through it all on autopilot, smiling, passing plates, refilling drinks. Every time Derek caught my eye, he gave me the same warm look he had given me for years. Every time Brooke passed me in the hallway, she squeezed my arm like we were close. I kept the screenshots in my pocket like a weapon I was not ready to draw. Late that evening, after most people had gone to bed, I slipped into the den where the old bookshelves stood. I ran my fingers along the spines until I found the worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird that had been my grandmother's favorite. I pulled it down. A folded piece of paper slid out from between the pages and landed on the rug. I picked it up with 2 fingers like it might burn me. It was written in Brooke's handwriting. Claire has always used money to control us. The loan wasn't help, it was a leash. Everyone deserves to know. My breath caught. They had already planted the note. They were going to make sure it surfaced during the weekend, probably during the big Sunday toast when the whole family would be gathered and sentimental. One accidental discovery and the story would write itself. Poor. Derek and Brooke finally free of their controlling sister, who had been holding financial favors over their heads for years. I slid the note back into the book exactly where I had found it. My hands were steady, but inside something was cracking open. Not sadness, something sharper, something that tasted like the end of pretending. I walked upstairs to the room Derek and I were sharing. He was already asleep, one arm flung across my side of the bed like nothing had changed. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching him breathe. Then I turned around, went back downstairs, and sat at the kitchen table with my phone. I opened the locked folder. I read the screenshots again. I added the text from the note I had just found. Outside, the Kentucky night was still and dark. Inside the house held its breath. I had spent years being the one who fixed things quietly, the one who wrote checks and signed papers and never asked for credit. Now, the people I had helped were planning to burn me alive with the very act of helping. I did not know yet how this weekend would end. I only knew one thing for certain. They had made a mistake. They had assumed I would stay quiet. If you have ever felt your own family quietly rewriting your story while you were still in the room, comment strength below. I need to know I'm not the only one who felt the floor tilt that night. I sat at the kitchen table long after the house had gone quiet. The only light came from my phone screen and the small lamp over the stove. I typed every word I could recall from the conversation I had overheard, then added the exact text from the note I had found in the old book. Thoughtful, firm. I saved everything to 3 different places, my phone a hidden email draft, and a small notebook I kept in my purse. If they wanted to rewrite my story, I was going to keep the original pages. The next morning, the reunion picked up speed. Family filled the kitchen and the long wooden table on the back porch. My Aunt Patricia moved between everyone with plates of biscuits and gravy, her usual steady presence. My cousin Tyler cracked jokes about the old tire swing in the yard. My parents sat at the head of the table, relaxed and happy to have everyone under one roof again. Derek poured coffee like the perfect host. Brooke laughed at something one of the cousins said and caught my eye across the room with a small, knowing smile. I smiled back. It felt like wearing someone else's face. During breakfast, Derek brought up the loan without naming it. He leaned back in his chair and said loud enough for several people to hear, "You know, some people do you a favor once and then act like they own a piece of your life forever. Gratitude has an expiration date, right?" A few relatives chuckled politely, not catching the edge. Brooke nodded like he had said something wise. I kept buttering my toast, my knife moving in slow, even strokes. Inside, I felt the familiar cold snap of recognition. They were testing the waters, floating the narrative early, so it would feel natural by Sunday. I did not take the bait. I passed the butter to my mother and asked her about her garden. My voice stayed calm. My hands did not shake. But every word Derek had spoken tightened something in my chest like a pulled thread. After breakfast, I stepped outside to take a call from Tara, my colleague at the community center. She had been covering my shifts while I was at the reunion. Her voice came through tense and apologetic. Claire, I hate to bother you on your time off, but your sister stopped by again yesterday afternoon. She said she was dropping off something for you. I told her you weren't here, but she stayed and chatted with a couple of the volunteers. She mentioned something about you being overwhelmed lately and how the family was worried about your judgment with money. I closed my eyes for 1 second. What exactly did she say? Tara hesitated. She said you had a habit of using financial help as a way to keep people in line, that some of the grants you manage might be getting too personal. She left before I could ask what she meant. I just thought you should know. Another thread pulled tight. They were not only planning the public version at the reunion, they were seeding the story at my workplace too, in case I tried to push back later. My quiet financial leverage, the fact that I had helped them when no one else could or would, was being turned into proof that I was the problem. I thanked Tara, told her I would handle it when I got back, and ended the call. When I turned around, Brooke was standing on the porch steps, watching me. "Everything okay at work?" she asked, voice sweet. "Fine," I said. "Just a quick check-in." She tilted her head. "You know, if things are getting stressful there, you could always lean on family more. Derek and I have been talking about how much we've leaned on you in the past. Maybe it's time we returned the favor by being honest with everyone about how it really felt." There it was. The second jab of the day delivered with a smile while family members moved around inside the house. I met her eyes and let the silence sit for a beat longer than comfortable. "I appreciate the offer," I said evenly, "but I prefer handling my own life." Brooke's smile flickered for half a second before she recovered. "Of course you do." She went back inside. I stayed on the porch, breathing through the anger that wanted to rise. They were accelerating the timeline. The note in the book was still there, but they had already started the softer version of the story in places where I could not easily defend myself without looking defensive. That afternoon, I found a moment alone in the den again. I checked the old book. The note was gone. My pulse kicked hard, once then settled into something colder. They had moved it. The plan was active and shifting. I was still standing there when Frank Harlan, the neighbor who lived at the end of the road and had known our family since before I was born, knocked on the open side door. He held a basket of early tomatoes from his garden. "Figured you all could use some fresh ones," he said. Then he glanced past me at the bookshelves and lowered his voice. "Everything all right in here, Claire? I saw your sister and Derek out by the old shed earlier. They looked like they were hiding something in a book bag." "Not my business, but you've always been the steady one in this family. If something's off, you don't have to handle it alone." The offer landed like an unexpected hand on my shoulder. I thanked him for the tomatoes and told him I had it under control, but his words stayed with me. Someone outside the immediate circle had noticed something was wrong. That mattered. By evening, the house was loud with stories and laughter. Derek kept a hand on my lower back. Whenever we stood near each other, the picture of a supportive husband. Brooke stayed close to the younger cousins, playing the fun aunt. I moved through it all, listening, watching, collecting. Later, after most people had gone to their rooms, I heard voices in the hallway outside our bedroom. Derek and Brooke again. "She's being too quiet," Brooke said. "That usually means she's planning something." Derek's answer was low and sharp. "Doesn't matter. The group chat is already primed. One more forward tomorrow and the toast on Sunday finishes it. She'll either fold or look crazy in front of everyone. Either way, we win." I stood just inside the bedroom door phone in my hand, recording the conversation through the cracked door. My thumb hovered over the save button. Thoughtful, firm. I had learned from watching them that the best defense was their own words, preserved exactly as they spoke them. When their footsteps moved away, I saved the file, labeled it with the date and time, and added it to the growing folder. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the dark window. They thought the weekend would end with my reputation in pieces and their leverage restored. They had no idea I was already turning their own weapons around. The next morning, I woke to another notification. This one was not a mistake. It was deliberate. A new message in the big family group chat from an account I did not recognize at first glance. The profile picture was blank. The message contained a screenshot of an older, private thread, cleaned up and edited to make it look like I had been the one pushing the loan as a power play. My stomach dropped. They had started the public phase early. I scrolled through the reactions, already appearing confused emojis, a few questions, one cousin asking what was going on. Aunt Patricia had replied with a single question mark. I closed the app without responding. My hands were steady, my mind was not. They had fired the first real shot. I had until Sunday to decide whether I would let them finish the story they had written for me or whether I would stand up in the middle of their performance and hand them back their own words. I chose the second option before I even stood up from the bed, but I also knew that once I did, there would be no going back to the version of this family that smiled at holidays and pretended everything was fine. The public image of unity they cared so much about protecting would crack, and I would be the one holding the hammer. I was ready for that. What I was not ready for was the text that came through from Tara 20 minutes later. Claire, your sister, just called the center again. She said if you don't sort things out with the family this weekend, she's going to have to tell people at work about the grant you approved last year that helped your husband's business. She made it sound like it was improper. I don't know what's happening, but you need to get ahead of this. I read the message twice. They were not just coming for my reputation inside the family anymore. They were coming for my job. I set the phone down on the dresser and looked at myself in the mirror above it. The woman staring back did not look scared. She looked like someone who had finally stopped waiting for permission to protect herself. I opened my notes app one more time and added Tara's message to the record. Then I went downstairs to face the second day of the reunion with my eyes wide open. The note was still missing from the book. The group chat was already stirring. My workplace was now part of their battlefield. And I had just decided that if they wanted a war of words, I was going to make sure every single one of theirs was preserved and returned to sender. I went downstairs with Tara's message still open on my phone. The house smelled of bacon and coffee. Family voices floated from the kitchen. I slipped my phone into my back pocket and fixed my expression before I walked in. My husband looked up from the stove with that easy smile he had perfected over the years. Morning. Sleep. Okay. Fine, I said. I poured coffee and sat where my aunt was already passing plates. My younger sister stood at the counter scrolling. She glanced up. The family chat is getting interesting, she said loud enough for the cousins to hear. Did you see that message this morning? A couple of heads turned. I kept my voice light. I saw it. Looks like someone wants drama before the food is even ready. My husband's hand tightened on the spatula. My younger sister's eyes narrowed for half a second before she recovered and laughed like it was nothing. The morning moved in small, deliberate steps. My husband made a point of mentioning old favors that people never let go of while passing biscuits. My younger sister agreed loudly that some people use money to keep score. A few relatives nodded without really listening. I passed the jam and asked my aunt about her new rose bushes. My voice stayed even. My hands stayed steady. But every comment landed like another thread being pulled. After breakfast, I stepped onto the back porch to call Tara. She answered on the first ring. I got your text, I said quietly. Can you send me exactly what my sister told you yesterday? Word for word, if you can. Tara exhaled. She said you had been using the grant process to steer money toward family businesses and that people at the center were starting to notice. She made it sound concerned, like she was protecting you from yourself. I wrote it down as soon as she left. I'll forward it now. The message came through 30 seconds later. I saved it to the same locked folder as everything else. Another clean, time-stamped piece of their own language. When I turned around, my neighbor Frank was walking up the driveway with another basket of tomatoes. He stopped at the bottom step. Figured the crowd could use more, he said. Then he lowered his voice. Your sister and husband were out by the shed again early this morning. Looked like they were arguing about a piece of paper. I didn't catch words, but the tone was ugly. You need anything, you know where I am. I thanked him and took the tomatoes inside. Another outside witness, another thread I could pull if I needed to. By midday, the family had scattered across the yard and the living room. I found a quiet corner in the den and checked the old book again. The note was still gone. I ran my hand along the shelf below it and felt something small and folded, tucked behind another volume. I pulled it out carefully. It was the same note, but now it had an extra line added in different handwriting, my husband's. She'll deny it at first. That's when we show the edited chat. She won't be able to talk her way out. They had updated their prop. I photographed both sides, returned the note exactly where I had found it, and slipped my phone back into my pocket. My pulse was steady. My mind was already rearranging the pieces. That afternoon, the group chat lit up again. Another screenshot appeared, this one edited more cleanly. It looked like I had written a message years ago demanding repayment with interest and threatening to make things difficult if I didn't get it. The reactions were starting to shift from confusion to discomfort. My Aunt Patricia replied with a single line, "This doesn't sound like Claire at all." My younger sister liked the comment immediately. I closed the app and went to find my husband. He was in the garage pretending to organize tools. I closed the door behind me. "We need to talk," I said. He straightened slowly. What about the note you and my sister planted in Grandma's book? About the messages you've been feeding the family chat? About the story you're telling Tara at my work?" His face changed for 1 second surprise, then the familiar, smooth mask. "I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out my phone and played the recording from the night before. His voice and my younger sister's voice filled the small space between us, clear and unmistakable. When it ended, I showed him the screenshots of the original forwarded thread and the photograph of the note with his added line. He stared at the screen. The mask slipped. "You were never supposed to find that," he said quietly. "You were never supposed to need it," I answered. "But here we are." He tried to reach for the phone. I stepped back. "Don't," I said. "Everything is already backed up in 3 places. Deleting it from my phone changes nothing." My younger sister appeared in the doorway behind him. She must have heard the recording through the door. Her face was pale. "You recorded us," she whispered. "I recorded the people who were planning to destroy my reputation in front of our entire family and then go after my job," I said. "Yes." My husband's voice turned sharp. "You're going to make this worse for yourself. If you show any of that, the family will see you as paranoid and controlling. Exactly what we've been saying." I looked at both of them. The people I had helped when no one else would. The people who had decided my help gave them the right to rewrite me. "You already made it worse," I said. "You just didn't expect me to keep the receipts." I turned and walked out of the garage. My hands were steady. My chest felt tight in a new way, not fear, but the clean edge of a decision finally made. Back inside, the family was gathering for an early dinner. My Aunt Patricia caught my eye across the room and gave a small, worried frown. I gave her a small nod. "Not yet. Soon." My phone buzzed with another text from Tara. "I just got off the phone with the center director. Your sister called again and tried to file some kind of informal complaint about grant oversight. The director shut it down and asked me to document everything. You have support here. Whatever is happening with your family, you don't have to carry it alone." I saved that message too. That night, after most of the house had gone quiet, I sat at the kitchen table again with my phone and the notebook. I had recordings, I had screenshots. I had the note with both handwritings. I had Tara's written account of the workplace interference. I had Frank's quiet offer of backup. They had wanted a public performance on Sunday. They had wanted me to stand there while they read my rewritten story out loud. I was going to give them a performance, just not the one they had scripted. I opened a new note and started typing what I would say if I stood up during the toast. Short, clear, no pleading, just the facts they had created themselves. When I finished, I saved it. Then I walked upstairs, got into bed beside my husband, and lay awake listening to him breathe like nothing had changed. By morning, I would decide exactly how and when to use every piece I had collected. They had assumed I would stay quiet. They had been wrong. The next morning was the final day of the reunion. Sunlight came through the kitchen windows while family moved around the table one last time before the big midday meal and toast. My husband stood at the stove flipping pancakes like nothing had happened. My younger sister laughed with the cousins about old childhood stories. My Aunt Patricia kept glancing at me with quiet concern. I ate slowly, answered when spoken to, and kept my phone in my pocket with the folder open and ready. Frank stopped by early with more tomatoes and stayed for coffee. He pulled me aside near the shed. "Whatever you're carrying, you don't have to carry it by yourself," he said. "I've known this family a long time. I've seen how you've been the one who shows up. If someone's rewriting that, I'll say what I saw." I thanked him. Another steady voice on my side. Another person who had noticed without being asked. Tara texted just before the meal. "Director confirmed everything in writing. Your sister's calls are documented as interference attempts. You have protection here. Do what you need to do with your family. We've got your back at work. I saved it with the rest." The record was complete. The family gathered on the back porch for the toast. My aunt had made her usual lemonade. My parents sat together, smiling at the full table. My husband stood near the head with a glass in his hand, ready to speak first like he always did at these gatherings. My younger sister stood beside him, already dabbing at her eyes for effect. I waited until the glasses were raised. My husband started with the usual warm words about family and memories. Then he shifted. "Some of us have carried extra weight over the years," he said, voice smooth. "Loans that were supposed to be help but turned into control. Favors that came with strings. It's time we stopped pretending that kind of generosity is free." My younger sister nodded, eyes shining. "We love you all. We just want honesty." I stood up before anyone could respond. "I have something to add," I said. My voice was calm, measured, the same tone I used when presenting grant reports at work. My husband's smile tightened. "This isn't the time, Claire. It's exactly the time I said, since you two decided to start the conversation in the family chat and in the old book." I held up my phone. I played the recording from the garage first, the clear voices of my husband and my younger sister planning how to use the note and the edited messages. The porch went silent except for the recording. When it ended, I showed the original screenshots of the forwarded group chat they had used to start the story. Then I showed the photograph of the note with both handwritings, my younger sister's original and my husband's added line about how I would deny it at first. My younger sister's face went white. My husband reached across the table toward my phone. "Give me that," he said, voice low and sharp. "You're making a scene." I stepped back. "Everything is already saved in 3 places. Touching my phone won't erase what you said." My Aunt Patricia spoke first. "Is that really your handwriting on that note?" my younger sister tried to recover. Tears came fast. "She's always been like this, controlling. We were just trying to protect ourselves." I played the second recording, the one from the hallway the night before, where they discussed accelerating the group chat and finishing everything at the toast. Their own words filled the air again, cold and calculated. My husband's voice on the recording said, "She'll either fold or look crazy in front of everyone. Either way, we win." The porch stayed quiet for a long moment. My cousin Tyler broke it. "That doesn't sound like protection. That sounds like a setup." Frank stepped forward from the edge of the porch where he had been listening. "I saw them with that book bag by the shed yesterday morning. They were arguing about a piece of paper. I didn't know what it was then. I do now." My Aunt Patricia stood up slowly. "Claire, is there more?" I nodded. I read Tara's messages out loud, the ones documenting my younger sister's calls to the community center, trying to undermine my work. I read the director's confirmation that it had been logged as interference. My husband tried one last push. "She's twisting everything." We were just venting. Families vent. I looked at him directly. "You weren't venting. You were planning. You took the one time I helped with money and turned it into a weapon. You planted a note. You edited messages. You went after my job. And you did it while smiling at the breakfast table." My younger sister's voice cracked. "You're going to destroy this family over a misunderstanding." I shook my head. "No. You already tried to destroy my place in it. I'm just refusing to let you finish." I put the phone down on the table where everyone could see the open folder. "I'm done being the quiet one who fixes things and stays silent when it costs me," I said. "I helped because I could. That doesn't give anyone the right to rewrite me or come after my work. From now on, any help I give will have clear boundaries. And right now, those boundaries mean I won't be the person you call when you need something fixed and then punish when you decide the price is too high. My parents looked stunned. My Aunt Patricia reached over and squeezed my hand once firmly. A few cousins were already whispering. The image of perfect family unity that my husband and my younger sister had tried so hard to protect was cracking in real time right in front of everyone they had wanted to impress. My husband's face had gone hard. "You're going to regret this." I met his eyes. "The only thing I regret is how long I stayed quiet while you planned this." My younger sister started to say something else, but my aunt cut her off gently but firmly. "Enough. We've heard enough for one day." The toast never happened. People began to drift away from the table in small groups. My husband and my younger sister left the porch. First, my husband, muttering something about packing. My younger sister followed without looking back. I stayed. Frank brought me a glass of lemonade I hadn't asked for. My aunt sat beside me without speaking for a while. Tara texted again with one line, "Whatever you just did, I hope it felt like choosing yourself." It did. Later that afternoon, after most of the family had gone inside to talk in smaller groups, I walked out to my car. My husband was loading bags into his truck. He didn't look at me. My younger sister sat in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't need to. I drove the short distance to Frank's place at the end of the road. He had offered the spare room if I needed space before heading home. I sat on his porch with a glass of water and watched the light change over the fields. The anger was still there, sharp and clean, but underneath it, something else was settling. Not peace exactly, not yet. Something closer to clarity. I had chosen myself in front of the people who had tried to make that choice impossible. I had used their own words to do it. The public image they cared about was gone, and I was still standing. My phone buzzed with one last message from my aunt. "You did the right thing. Call me when you're ready. Family doesn't mean staying silent while someone rewrites you. I saved that one too. I stayed at Frank's that night." The next morning, I drove back to my own house in town. The community center was quiet when I walked in on Monday. Tara met me at the door with coffee and a folder of her own, the director's official note protecting my position. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. There was work to do, grants to review, programs to plan, a life that belonged to me. My husband texted once that week, a short message asking if we could talk reasonably. I didn't answer. My younger sister didn't text at all. I blocked both numbers 2 days later. The old family story, the one where I was the steady fixer who never pushed back, was over. A new one had started, and I was the only one writing it. Choosing myself had cost the version of family I had tried to protect for years. It had also given me back the right to decide who got access to my time, my money, and my story. That was a price I was finally willing to pay. I stayed at Frank's that night. The spare room was simple: a bed, a lamp, a window that looked out over his fields. I sat on the edge of the mattress with my phone in my hands and let the day replay. The recordings, the note with both handwritings, the faces around the table when the truth landed. My husband reaching for my phone. My younger sister trying to cry her way out of her own words. The anger that had carried me through the toast finally cracked. I put the phone down, pressed both hands over my face, and cried until my shoulders shook. Not the quiet tears I had swallowed for years. These were the kind that came from the place I had kept locked. The place that had believed if I just stayed helpful and steady, they would eventually see me as more than a resource. That belief died on the porch. I let it go in the dark room at the end of the road. When the crying slowed, I lay back and stared at the ceiling. The house was quiet. No one was planning my next humiliation. No one was rewriting my help into control. For the first time in longer than I could remember, the silence belonged to me. I woke early. Frank was already in the kitchen making coffee. He poured me a cup without asking how I took it and set it on the table. "You did what needed doing," he said. "Some families can't handle the truth when it stops being convenient. That's not your failure." I nodded. The coffee was strong and hot. I drank it slowly. Tara texted while I was still at the table. "Director wants to meet when you're back. Not because of anything bad, because of what your sister tried. You're protected. Take the time you need." I thanked her and told her I would be in the next day. Another thread tied off, another place where their reach had been stopped. I drove home that afternoon. The countryside gave way to the small town I had built my own life in. My house looked the same porch light on garden I had planted myself, the mailbox with only my name. Inside, I walked through the rooms and touched the things that were mine because I had chosen them, not because someone had allowed me to keep them. My husband sent one more text that evening. Short, careful. We should talk before this gets worse for everyone. I read it twice, then blocked the number. My younger sister had already been blocked. The old pattern: reach out, expect me to fix it, punish me if I didn't end it with that single action. The following week, I met with the director at the community center. He had the folder Tara had started. He told me my position was secure and that any future contact from my family about my work would be documented and redirected to him. I thanked him. Then I went back to my desk and opened the grant applications that had been waiting. The work was steady. It was mine. My Aunt Patricia called a few days later. She didn't defend them. She didn't ask me to reconsider. She simply said the family had seen what they needed to see and that she was sorry it had taken so long for someone to say it out loud. I told her I appreciated the call. I didn't promise future holidays. I didn't close the door completely. I left it open on my terms, limited, clear, and only if respect came with it. The weeks after the reunion settled into something quieter. I went to work, I came home, I cooked meals for one without feeling like I had failed someone. I stopped scanning every conversation for the next hidden demand, the sarcastic voice in my head that had narrated years of course, they would twist it this way, grew quieter. Not gone. Just no longer the loudest thing in the room. One evening, I sat on my own porch with a glass of water and watched the light fade. I thought about the loan I had given years ago, the one they had turned into proof of my control. I had given it because I could, and because I believed family meant showing up when it mattered. That belief had not been wrong. Their decision to weaponize it had been. I could hold both truths at once now. The public image of family unity they had tried so hard to protect was gone. In its place was something smaller and more honest, a woman who had finally stopped volunteering to be the steady one at her own expense. The cost had been real. I had lost the version of family that smiled at toasts while planning ambushes. I had gained the right to decide who got access to my energy, my money, and my story. That trade was worth it. I still think about the note, sometimes the one they planted and then added to. Their own handwriting became the evidence that ended their plan. They had wanted to shame me in front of everyone. Instead, their words were the ones that stayed on record. That felt like the cleanest kind of justice. Not loud, not dramatic, just the truth they had written themselves turned back on the page where they had tried to bury me. Choosing myself had not been easy. It had required recording conversations I never wanted to hear again. It had required standing in front of people I loved and refusing to let them finish the story they had started without me. It had required blocking numbers and walking away from tables where my presence was only tolerated as long as I stayed useful. It had also been the most honest thing I had done in years. I am still the woman who shows up when help is truly needed. I am no longer the woman who stays silent when that help is turned into a weapon. The difference is small on paper and enormous in practice. It is the difference between being used and being whole. If you have ever had to stand in the middle of the story someone else wrote for you and refuse to read the lines they assigned, comment strength below. I would like to know I am not the only one who learned that silence was the most expensive price I ever paid. Thank you for listening to my story.